Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of Derby City Council Cabinet. It's Wednesday, the 21st of December, 4 o'clock, and thank you for your attendance. We'll launch straight in. Item 1 will be apologies. Councillor Williams is stuck in Christmas traffic somewhere, but she'll be with us very shortly. Any other apologies?
Andy Smith.
Okay. I don't believe we have any late items. With no petitions, I understand. Identification of urgent items to which call in will not apply.
There are none.
There are none. Declarations of interest, please. None. Minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of December, which I've read and seem to be okay to me. Do I have a seconder? Any comments, queries, amendments? No. There would normally be an item there in respect of the Executive Scrutiny Board, but there wasn't held on this occasion, and Councillor Repton's not here, so we won't need to have any recommendations or referral to that. So we've just one item on the agenda, and that is the budget, medium-term financial plan, update and proposed consultation in respect of the proposals that are being put forward. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. So this report tonight is launching the proposed budget for consultation for the Council for the financial years 2023-24 to 25-26. It is proposing a balanced budget for 23-24, which in the current climate is a significant achievement. Just if you would like, I'll take you through some of the major messages and information in this report to help any further discussion by Cabinet. So, okay. So, first of all, I think we need to set this budget against the context of very changeable and volatile economic conditions that we see nationally. We've seen it in terms of energy costs, in terms of inflation, pay awards, cost of provision of services, and many different factors which are atypical, i.e. that for a number of years inflation has been in that region of 2 to 3%, pay awards have generally been at that level. Energy, supply chain costs have generally been relatively stable, and the major pressure that as a council we've faced is a broken care market nationally, leading to market sufficiency and cost issues within those services we buy, especially for adults and children's social care. All of that has effectively gone up into the air in terms of there is lots of volatility across all those areas, which inevitably, as a council which spends a significant amount of services for and with the city, impacts on us. And probably it's just interesting in paragraph 4.6.4 does talk about the ongoing impact of those items on our budget accounts for 26.311 million of the increased cost for the council. So that is a significant pressure that has had to be faced up against in this budget. It's important there to say that if we had not done significant demand management, cost reduction, cost avoidance, managing partnerships, that could have been a lot in recent years. That could have been a lot higher. The council does have a track record of delivering well on the savings that it proposes in recent years, and if economic conditions were not as volatile, then it would have been an easier budget to set than it has been. So on the 7th of December, we issued a medium-term financial strategy talking about what the budget gap would be without increased government funding, mitigations, council tax increase and savings. And that was just over £30 million. Since then, we've got confirmation with the local government finance settlement, which came out on Monday of this week, that our forecasts in the autumn statement were broadly consistent with what we included in that report. So we indicated there was going to be increased money for social care, and that there was going to be a flexibility for increasing council tax over and above what we had in our medium-term financial plan. So just to confirm to Cabinet and other members that the funding that we were expecting, we were fairly close in respect of what we have received. So that's encouraging for our financial planning. So the report then takes you through a series of budget assumptions, ranging from social care to collection funded council tax and business rates, to what we've provided for a pay award, the savings plans that we have, and the impact on the workforce numbers that this budget can support. And they're detailed generally in paragraph 4.4.1 onwards. I draw your attention to the graph, which is on page 11, in terms of general inflation. You can see that inflation is still forecast to be high next year, in the region of about 7%, and with the potential that it could be negative in 2020-25 as the economic conditions stabilise again. So we need to plan for increased provision for increased costs over and above what we would normally do in this budget, details where we have done that. In terms of the new money for adult social care, that is really welcome. But some of that will have conditions attached to it of working with health, and some will have no conditions, i.e. that it can be used to support our general adult social care sort of expenditure. So probably just to move quickly on to the thrust of the report, which is the savings proposals. So the budget that is in front of you to go out for consultation is recommending 16.554 million of savings for next year, a further 3.6 million in the following year, and a further 200,000 in the year after that. But 4.6.12 talks about the budget and the net increase and decrease to the budget of the pressures and savings. So again, here you can see that core statutory priorities of the council, supporting the vulnerable, supporting our children in care. There's a net increase of 6 million for children's social care and 4.3 million for adult social care. So again, it's trying to make sure that we match our resources to the priorities and the responsibilities that we have. The consequence of having to balance the budget, and those savings are detailed in the appendix, is that we have had to look at a reduction in the council's workforce. And at this stage, prior to voluntary redundancies or natural turnover, there is 161 posts identified, which may have to be disestablished. 58 of those are vacant posts, with a potential further reduction of 103. That is higher due to the size of the budget gap we had to meet than in previous years. But again, to give Cabinet some comfort, last year we started off with a assumed redundancy that could happen, and when we actually reached the end of the consultation period and everything else, that number was significantly lower. The report does detail the reserves position of the council. I've highlighted in the updates that I've given to Q1 and Q2 budget this year that the impact of inflation on our budget is leading to an overspend in the council's revenue budget for 22-23. And the graph at the top of page 20, so paragraph 4.8.3, shows the significance of that in terms of our usable reserves. So for the previous 3 years, reserves have increased in terms of usable reserves. And then if that overspend is not mitigated or not reduced by the end of the year, and it's proving a challenge to, in times of high inflation, to reduce that significantly, our reserves will go down. If they go down by the amount reported at Q2, it does mean that your usable reserves are at a historical low figure, just above the general fund balance that we recommend as part of the budget process. So financial sustainability, financial resilience is really important in the forward approach of the council. In an ideal world, we would have been able to put money into reserves for this financial year. That hasn't been possible, and therefore, in the medium-term financial plan going forward, there is an assumption that the planned contribution to reserves are made now 1 year later in 24-25 and 25-26, and that is part of a budget gap identified for those 2 years. Finally, Chair, if I can just go into the capital programme. The council still has an ambitious capital programme, has been very successful in sourcing external funding and actually delivering a number of schemes where we're seeing a positive impact on the city. Smart Park in terms of job creation, the proposed development at Beckenwell Performance Venue, and all of those remain in the capital programme. But we have taken the chance to look at the profiling of the capital programme and the financing and any new schemes that are coming in, just to make sure that, again, our capital investment is delivering the best outcomes for the city. So the report, in summary, talks about increasing council tax. The report assumes that we'll go out to consult on a council tax which is at 4.99%. That's 2% for the adult social care precept, which is up 1% from what we assumed in February, and a 2.99% for the council element, which is up from 1.99% in February. The government assumes that 95% of local authorities, and they said this in the autumn statement, will increase their council tax by the maximum. Just again, there's a graph in paragraph 4.10.7, which talks about the comparative council tax Band D equivalents. So that's effectively the measure that equalises it across the country. And you can see that Derby's council tax is low compared to some of our neighbouring or comparable authorities. But it is still a 5%, so a 4.99% increase, which you can see in the table on 4.10.5 will mean a weekly increase of Band A property £1.01 to a Band H property of £3.03 a week. But overall, Chair, it's been a very tough context to set the budget in, but this does deliver a balanced budget for 23-24 and indicative gaps which are lower than a lot of the comparators for 24-25, 25-26. But the council has to focus on delivery of this budget, subject to consultation, and maintaining financial resilience in the short and medium term. Happy to take any questions along with Alison Parker, our Director of Finance, as members want. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for that summary. I can't start to comment on this without referring to the amount of work that I and Cabinet know has been put into this. It's been an ambition of ours to present a balanced budget. That's not come easily. That's taken hours and days and many 6-hour sessions looking at this budget between us and yourselves, sitting down and agonising over what we can and can't do in respect to this budget. So I can only thank you on behalf of Cabinet, you and your team, for the effort that's gone in to get to this point. It has been, in my experience, the busiest and the most difficult budget round that I've ever had to sit down and go through, and we've done it in some absolute infinite detail. And on top of that, I mean, it has to be said that we as a local council, as a city council, cannot underestimate the volatility of the economy and the effects that it's had on our budgeting. Nobody with the best medium-term financial planning could have predicted the perfect storm that's occurred in relation to costs and inflation, wages, and all the other things that Simon and others have listed over the last 12 months and the compound effect of that on our budget process. making it an extremely difficult one to deal with, and such a large amount to do. And Simon's referred to the in-year demand management and other processes that have been done to keep this year's, because it's hit this year already. It's not that it's going to be unique to next year or the year after, or any other authority is immune to it. Everybody is, but we've already started successfully to try and alleviate the damage through demand management and other measures. So, as you say, on the 7th of December, we've been upfront and honest out with this when we dealt with the MTFP and explained to council, to the public, the extent of the issues that we're dealing with, and took our time in coming together to produce this plan, these proposals that need to go out to consultation, meaningful consultation for us to tell people what we propose is the best way forward in dealing with this, and we will take account of the consultation and any feedback we get from wherever it is, to be honest. We've had the result of the local government settlement, final one on Monday, so we've got clarity on where we're at with that. We needed that to be able to finalise these proposals and actually to finalise the details of a letter that we'll be sending to government around highlighting the difficulties that all local authorities, but particularly Derby, experience, and Councillor Shanker and I will be finalising that draft letter and sending that off in due course. We had the opportunity last week through one of the ministers coming to Derby on what was called a fact-finding mission on the back of an invite to the government minister to hear firsthand from us as politicians, but also from officers in relation to the budget. It was received, listened to, no promises made or net gain at the time, but what I was reassured was that the minister has gone away understanding much more about what the issues are in relation to local government, besides the fact that he was a local politician, a local councillor in a previous life, if you like, and is an East Midlands resident. So that was very valuable, but that's not the end of any lobbying that we need to do in respect of local government finance and the fix overall in relation to how local government is financed. They've reaped the benefits over the last 2 years of local authorities positioned to be able to assist with their agenda in relation to national crises and things that have come along, and they now should understand and should be able to fund properly what local government needs to do. This report talks about budget assumptions. I have to say I'm pleased that the MTFP and the guideline and the estimates and the budget assumptions we made in the past were fairly accurate, apart from the fact that all these other pressures came on top. I'm heartened that the prediction is that inflation will come down reasonably sharply to something like 7% next year, and maybe even in a negative in 2025. That will help in relation to budgeting, but we have to plan for that in a sensible and balanced way. One of the most difficult facts about this budget proposal, if not the most, is the potential effect on employment at the council, a reduction of 160 jobs across the board, and I mean right across the board from director level to every level across the council. We've been able to look at 58 of those being vacant posts, which is obviously has less effect than on the employee than otherwise. There will be a number of voluntary redundancies, I expect, and we may not end up with the same number of predicted compulsory redundancies as the report outlines at the moment. Simon rightly pointed out that it's not that services like children's services and adult services are being cut to the bone or cut lower than what their budget is now. Their budget for children's is increased by around 6 million, and for adults around 4.3 million. The problem with that is that money doesn't go as far as it used to, and as a result, we've had to look even at non-statutory services within those two departments, which is not a good thing. Usable reserves. Simon pointed out that for the last 3 years we've been able to build back some money into usable reserves. And that may be dependent on the outcome of this year's mid-term financial plan and the results for this year. It seems likely that we won't be able to do that this year, and we'll have to postpone the plan that was to refurbish or reinstate some of the usable reserves to a higher level than we've got now. Now, we're not unique in that either. Many authorities have reached a point where they are at minimal advised reserves, and we pointed out that to the Minister, and also alongside the fact there's certain other authorities, county level authorities, that don't seem to have that level of problem in terms of reserves as yet, but it's something we are extremely conscious of, and we'll start to rebuild the year after next. So I guess the other thing I wanted to mention in this initial statement is that there's been speculation about us having to stop any regeneration plans or redevelopment plans or whatever. The fact that the capital budget has remained as it has and has been added to a little bit should reassure people that we have, as an authority, no intention to stop regeneration or redevelopment or investment, or even pause it, because that would be a disaster for the city. We've got a programme of regeneration and development that's coming over the next few years, with the likes of the market hall, the likes of the entertainment venue, the likes of the university moving into the city, and recent developments announced in relation to Derby, alongside all the accommodation strategy for the city centre on Castlewood and on the DRI site and Beckett. Well, those plans will continue. They won't even be paused, but we will need to work in a more innovative way alongside developers and investors who are noticing Derby. They're coming to Derby every day to hear and the things that happen. Why are people investing in apartments on Beckett? Well, it makes people sit up and look, and we're getting more and more investment inquiries almost on a daily basis. So it's an ambition that we will continue to do that, and an indication that despite the tough times, the financial planning and the way we work across the city is just that. It's across the city, focusing on our priorities and those in need, and tackling cost of living, but at the same time doing what's necessary for the city to be taken forward proactively. This is certainly not the type of budget that I envisaged that we would ever want to present to the public, but I'm afraid circumstances combined together to force us to do that, and I think we're doing it in a very responsible and restrained way, and we will work with partners, hopefully other political groups and the officers, to put some of this right. So that's my opening gambit. I don't know if any cabinet members wanted to come in at this point, or we can open it out to other group leaders for any reassurance that they need or more information they need on the proposals, rather than debating them all today. The purpose of this cabinet meeting report is for the cabinet to agree the strategy in terms of putting it out for consultation, and the process and how the timescales for all that and whatever. The detail of some of the proposals is in the report. I accept that there may be a couple or one or two that other members might want more clarity on. If that's the case, tell us, and we can we can give you whatever information and whatever detail in relation to those proposals. So, any questions, comments?
Before you go on, could you just switch your microphone on and off again? Camera's not back. It's totally on you at the moment, so.
I'll try it for me.
Camera's on you at the moment.
Mine's on me, but I don't know if it's not working
That
on
one
the main.
behind. That one's fine. Just
Okay, well, we'll deal with that as we come. So, if there's no questions or comments, then, oh, you did want to comment, Becky.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it's difficult, but let me just first point out, and I'm sure you don't need any reminding, if you just read the recommendations, it's not just the start of the consultation that you're debating here as a Cabinet, as you've just alluded to. You're actually agreeing at 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4 to create using earmarked reserves to help with the current budget situation. That's part of a decision today. That's not something you're consulting on. If anybody wants to correct me and say I'm wrong, but as far as I can read, at 2.3, 2.2 and 2.4, you're actually making a decision to move earmarked reserves to help with the cost of the change, and actually moving almost £750,000 from the delivering change earmarked reserves also into the budget risk reserve. So it's not just the consultation element that you've alluded to.
I take your point, Maggie, but I actually was referring to the proposals rather than the detail of the balancing or the use of reserves.
It's just clearly stated in the
I was
recommendation.
referring to proposals in relation to changes to services rather than financial. But go on.
Okay, thank you. I'd also like to pay tribute, like you have done, to each and every employee of the council. I've spoken to many in recent weeks, and I've met some as well, and it's absolutely heartbreaking to hear some of the stories that our employees and staff are telling us, just how low and demoralised and stressed people are feeling, not just with the current circumstances out there in society, but also being employees of local government. It's not a very nice time. And apologies if you're going to find this difficult to hear. I'm going to make this point, and it's true as well. But after 12 years of austerity, local government, you may laugh, Chris, it's not really a funny point, but after 12 years of austerity, it's really hitting people very, very hard. And after then a further 5 years of dithering and delaying and indecision at a local level, it is really, really tough for people. I've read the budget report, and I hope most of the Cabinet have by now. 52 pages of detail. A lot of it, unfortunately, I've got to say, or a significant amount of it, still a little bit in denial that austerity has hit Derby so hard. Lots of propaganda and I appreciate why you have to do this in your position. Other Conservative council leaders have chosen a different strategy and have been a bit more open and direct with government, but you've decided to sort of make the report a bit of a propaganda stunt for how well the Conservative government have done for the last 12 years. But the reason you're in this position is they actually haven't done that well. And what you're deciding to do when you get cut through all of the rhetoric is, once again, for the 5th year you've been in control, is propose to put council tax up by the maximum amount legally allowed this year of 4.99%, when you yourself promised you would keep council tax increases to a minimum. Austerity has hit Derby hard. It continues to hit Derby hard. And my figure, again, I openly welcome challenge. has cost Derby, since it began, at least £750 million. So whilst hard-pressed families are dealing with many of the challenges out there, increasing mortgage rates after this mini-budget, was it called? The disastrous mini-budget, let's add, rocketing energy prices, constantly struggling generally to make ends meet. What you're saying is, actually what we'll do here in Derby is let's whack council tax up to the maximum legal amount again, and cut services back to a level that we haven't seen here in Derby before. You're having to do this, let's be honest with you, you're having to do this because you've blown usable council reserves in previous years to support the revenue budget. You know, the trees in the marketplace. We knew we were in this financial position when you decided to approve projects such as the trees in the marketplace. You blew... It's good. Well, you had an opening gambit. Oh dear. Good try, Chris, but it's not going to change my tact. You've had an opening gambit. Let me say what I've got to say. I said to you earlier on, it's going to be difficult for you to hear, and if you can't sit there and hear this, you know, I'll not contribute at all. If that's the approach, Chris, can I just finish, please? If that's the approach you want me to take, I'm happy not to say anything here, but what you won't do is gag what I've got to say. The people of Derby will hear what I say. I think this meeting's a relevant point to make my points heard. I think you should respect that and let me say that. Absolutely, and I think blowing reserves for this council over the years and making silly decisions like the assembly rooms is absolutely relevant to Derby's budget and Derby City Council. Absolutely relevant. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, okay, let me just, on that point, I left that meeting with explaining where I'd got that figure from and still believing that figure is true. Nobody, officer level or at council level, has ever come back and challenged that figure, so just to make that clear. I think you've also failed, Chris, to lobby government and to demonstrate to them how badly Derby has been hit by austerity and properly launch, as we agreed, a fair funding deal for Derby campaign. So I think it's really bad, and you touched on this as well, although I think I heard the word saying re-establishment of some posts, but you know, you were a bit more direct, 162 posts being lost by the council, and I appreciate many of them, 50 or so, as you said, are vacant posts, but it's still over 100 people just being told just before Christmas that they are to lose their jobs. I don't think that's a very good way of doing it. You've used the word remarkable in the past, and I noticed today, so far, you've resisted using that word. You've instead said you're pleased, and you're heartened with this budget. But again, I'd ask you whether you think it's remarkable, because I think it's an absolute disaster for the city and for families in each and every one of our wards. And I make that point again, going back to the recommendations 2.2, 2.3, not happy with blowing the usable reserves of this council. You're now proposing, and I just find this absolutely astonishing. I think people of Derby will find this absolutely astonishing as well. You're now admitting you're going to fail to put money back into the reserves that you committed to do just earlier this year when you set the budget, but you're actually taking money out of earmarked reserves to pay for the cost of change without a plan to put that money back into earmarked reserves. I find that astonishing, and I think just looking around, I'm not sure whether your cabinet understand that's what you're actually doing. And look, you're obviously really, really uncomfortable, or you find this funny. I'm not sure which is the better one out of the two. I'll have plenty of time to make my points, and I will make my points. But what I am going to do, with your permission, is just summarise what this budget actually does. And this is notes from the budget report itself. So, 162.
Before you go on to, before I decide to give you that extra leniency to do that, you can't get away with some of the comments you make there. What would have been remarkable would have been if you'd have been able to focus on your contribution on the consultation itself, rather than just trying to take another opportunity to politicise and make political gain in what are very, very challenging circumstances. And maybe it would be a forlorn hope, but we've been asking for months and months and months for suggestions and ways of dealing with and saving money in relation to the budget. Maybe are you about to announce some proposals of your own, are there, that would help us avoid being forced into using reserves?
Happy to answer that one head on, Chris, as I always do. And you'll remember the meeting we had, which I've agreed to help you. I've agreed to write and countersign a letter to government. I also asked at that meeting, give us the details of your budget proposals, and I was blankly refused. I've had other meetings with officers and said, give us the details of your proposals so we can do exactly what you're suggesting, come up with alternatives. And we was told at them meetings, no, we're not giving you those details. So don't sit there trying to think you can,
Councillor
say
Shanky,
we can make some proposals.
Deviating off into other things.
We've not been given those details.
Fact is,
I'm just answering that question you put to me.
Well, but you're not answering it sensibly, and you're just still politicking. The fact is, how can we give you at that meeting the details of the proposals that weren't finalised?
Because you had them yourself, and if you wanted us to constructively engage at that stage, you had to give us something to engage with.
No, you're wrong, Councillor Shanker. At that stage, we were still working on the proposals.
But you had some proposals.
So we couldn't share them with it before they're ready.
I don't believe, anyway, Chris, you got the proposals a minute before. So let me summarise.
Maybe this is for another.
Let me summarise.
Another way of dealing with this privately or whatever, because the public don't need to hear you and I arguing on this. They want to hear.
I don't think you want to hear me arguing on this.
What we're going to do to solve the problem, not to cause any further problem.
Okay.
Right,
so correct me if I'm wrong.
A few more minutes before I have to move on. Yeah?
Correct me if I'm wrong on any of my summary. So a maximum council tax increase and 162 job losses. Early help for children and families being cut back. Adults social care packages only being available for those in most critical and desperate needs, which in my view will only make more people critical and desperate because you're withdrawing the early support. Our libraries that have been run in partnership will close with these proposals. Privatising of our leisure facilities, reduction in the basic function of councils, keep our streets clean and maintain our highways. Locality teams being cut back. All the success we've had of PPOs and neighbourhood working, you're now proposing to cut that back. And unbelievably, actually, saying we're going to close the council house for more of the time, reducing the time the council house is open to the public of Derby. Again, correct me if I've got any of these wrong, Chris. And you deny giving up on or even cutting back on any of the regeneration projects for the city centre. But the report says you're doing it. So either the report's wrong and you may want to correct that, but the report refers to the council not being as proactive and being able to invest in regeneration projects in the city centre. So again, if that's wrong in the report, please do bring it out. And then cutting back on support services across the council, which will make the council potentially a lot more inefficient. So that's my summary. If any of that's wrong, please either yourself or your cabinet, put the record straight.
Thank you. No, then none of those are wrong. They are all contained within the report. At least it's shown you've read it and can read properly and things. But unfortunately, as I said in my opening gambit, this is not the type of budget that we wanted to have to present. This is the type of budget we're forced to try and have to present and make proposals on. And I have to say, if you'd have been party to the discussions, many discussions and hours that we've agonised over this, these are the least of many evils, if you like. With the position could have been even worse. There could have been many more significant cuts to public services if the officers hadn't done what they'd done in the course of this year and we hadn't worked on alternatives. None of those things are desirable. None of those things are what we came as an administration in to do. But as we've warned people from the beginning, these are unique services, unique situations. We've warned people, been open and honest about the extent of the problem. And you can't take that much money out, 10% out of the business without having effects on something. And the ones that we're proposing are those with the minimal effect that we believe that have the least effect on services across the city. And that's why we're going out to consultation. We want to hear people's views on that, and we'll take those into consideration. But having said that, clearly there is no more money. There's not. If something gives, if people want to change something, we will have to change something else, and that's the point of the consultation. One quick comeback then.
Just one question, and again, in the spirit of collaboration and working together, you mentioned you went through a whole list of other evils and alternatives, and decided these are the ones that were more palatable than others, and you rejected some. But just in that spirit of being able to engage with the whole process, will you share with me and possibly other group leaders what the alternatives were?
There are that many and that varied, but I can guarantee that they would have been far less palatable than what we've had to put forward now, and it would have gone into serious. I'll give you one example. It would have given. It would have eaten in seriously into our waste collection service. There was a proposal that we went to 3 weekly black bins, for example. Now that's unpalatable for everybody in the city and not the right way forward. So that's an example, but there are many and varied, and I wouldn't want to unnecessarily worry the public, but there were, at times we were looking at far more far-reaching cuts into public services as a result of this. So in that case, in that way, it's quite remarkable what we've ended up with. So, moving on. Anybody else? Ruth.
Having read through the proposals, I can't help but think that these budget proposals from the Conservative administration do make for very grim reading. More salami slicing of services, and then of others, the wholesale closure, such as the community managed libraries. And for people who can't afford the internet at home, this will mean that they become even more digitally excluded. At a time when interaction with government is digital by default, moves to close these libraries is very much a retrograde step. Some of the cuts are to statutory services, particularly in people services, where people have legal entitlements. And I'm not convinced, after years of cutting back on those services, I'm not convinced that those cuts are actually achievable. We'll certainly get ourselves into some legal cases, I think, as a result. Looking at the proposals, few proposals in fact, for income generation, they are indeed very modest. I'm surprised Cabinet hasn't actually thought more on this front. Council is actually facing a financial crisis, and yet there seems to be just an acceptance that residents are just going to have to take it on the chin. Derby City Council is desperately in need of money, yet the Cabinet refused to implement the motion that I proposed back in July 2021 to full council, which asked for Cabinet to get Marketing Derby to identify new owners for Alistry Hall and Golf Course. This was designed by the world-famous golf course designer Harry Colt. And I have to tell you that in 2021, one of his courses, Stoke Park, was sold by Buckinghamshire Council on a very long lease for £57 million. That's right, £57 million. Even if Derby City Council were to be able to achieve half of that, it will make a huge difference. For example, we could build a purpose-built school for those with high-functioning autism, saving money on expensive out-of-area placements and the associated home-to-school transport costs. Other spend to save initiatives to reduce the council's energy use could also be done, meaning lower day-to-day running costs. The council needs to start fully cooperating as well with Historic England to get that golf course grade listed. And it's actually in the council's financial interest to do so, because by doing so, it will increase the value. You might smirk, Councillor Poulter.
I'm not smirking, Councillor Skelton. I'm absolutely shocked that something that we've done to death, that's been discussed and decided and moved on from,
the fact
is,
that you
is the
are
focus
so
of your
closed-minded
contribution
towards a
towards the
commercial
budget.
opportunity. You would rather cut services in this city and see people really suffer and struggle than actually change your mind and have to
But
actually
it's not
swallow
a commercial
your pride.
opportunity, and
It is a commercial opportunity, because I full well know there are two organisations who've recently expressed interest in running it as a
and
commercial...
work is ongoing with that. We're talking to both, but
Well,
it's
I
not.
hope you are, but
Well,
then this does need to get put forward. You know, you can't
Can
just
we
say,
move
oh,
on
well,
to something
yeah.
more significant in the budget process?
But this will add beneficially to the budget process. I can't understand why you can't understand that. So I propose that you actually, you know, go back on your previous ill thought out decisions and actually to get either Marketing Derby to actually market this properly, not like you did before, just looking at people who run municipal golf courses. Actually look at this as a commercial opportunity and actually try and get as much value for the people of Derby out of this as we can. We are in a dire situation financially and we need to do it. Thank you.
Is that it?
That is it, yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to spend any time on the Alistry Golf situation, unless you really need to, because I mean that's just, I can't believe that that's the contribution, and your contribution in relation to the wholesale closure of the libraries is just wrong. You know, there's no proposal to shut them all completely and just sell them off and whatever. You know, Councillor Eyre could tell you, if you want to contact him separately, exactly what the plans are, but it is not a case that we've made any decision or any proposal to just close them carte blanche. There are plans afoot the reason we extended it until the end of March was to give us the opportunity to look at all the options in relation to those community managed libraries and hopefully and desirably bring them as many back of them and keep them in use using community involvement and community activity to make them warm spaces, to make them public and community spaces with books rather than call them a library, and make more use of what we've got. So your statement in relation to wholesale closure of libraries is inaccurate. Anybody else? Yeah, come on, John.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Chair. So obviously, I've been quite vocal on this myself as Cabinet Member for Finance. This has obviously been probably one of the worst budget settings processes that I've been involved in since I've become a Cabinet Member 5 years ago. It's not been palatable at all in any of the decisions that have been taken in this current process. I got respect for Councillor Shanker in obviously the statements he makes. We know that we're going to be politically, ideologically different, but the contribution from Councillor Skelton just blows my mind. The whole route that we're discussing, and Alistair Hall's top of their list. I mean, I know the Lib Dems are in turmoil at the moment, and the 1 minute they're taking councillors on, and the next minute they're not. Just baffles me. This is one of the most hardest budget setting processes that we're taking. And whilst I appreciate Councillor Shanker's contributions, obviously are going to be slightly different to our viewpoints, but I think we're on agreement that this is probably one of the most toughest budgets taking place. But to go down the route of solely Alistair Hall is something that I can't believe that we actually even discussed today. Well, one idea may be that you can bring it to the table at a later date then, but just to focus on that particular issue at the moment is, for me, quite mystifying. But, Chair, just want to reiterate a lot of points that you've raised up already today in your opening gambit. You stole some of the bits I was going to say. But obviously, we know this is not going to be palatable to the public of Derby. I've been vocal in the critical use of increasing council tax. Unfortunately, government always, every year when they set their statements to us, is always on the assumption that we maximise council tax income, which for me, they need to look back at. I know there's a lot of firefighting at the moment, but for them, they need to refund the formula around how council tax is set for all local authorities in the future. There also needs to be some major policy and legislative work around the broken care market. I know Councillor Williams has always expressed great passion for the cost of cap of care, because out of town placement or out of city placement is absolutely crucifying us into being able to look after our most vulnerable children. And obviously we have a statutory duty to protect our most vulnerable, and because of that, obviously increases our pressures in children's services. So whilst this budget is in particularly not something we ever want to present, I know there's going to be a lot of robust debate come February 28th when it comes to full council. Obviously, this paper comes back in February Cabinet with the finalised outcome from the consultation, but obviously there will be the finalised outcome from the obviously any changes to our settlement from central government. So some of the Cabinet members might want to pick up some of the points obviously raised in respect to their portfolios, but whilst it's not a paper that I particularly want to present, but we have a duty to make sure that we deliver a balanced budget and take it to full council on February 28th. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important to reiterate that all the members, officers and elected have poured long and hard over these lines of budget to get where we are. And no one comes into politics to do these kinds of things. However, it's not always milk and honey, and it takes a certain amount of stamina and attitude to make tough decisions. And while these are not decisions we make lightly, it is fiscally responsible of us to produce a balanced budget. And I know it's already been said tonight, but you know, full credit to Simon, his team, and all of the officers who have helped get us to this point, and particularly those who fall under my portfolio. What is sad to see is the contribution from our opposition leaders, that is the right term. While Councillor Skelton gives us at least some ideas, we get, in the almost 10 minutes Councillor Shanker had to speak, not one proposal from him. Not one. Not only does that do us a disservice, but the people who elect him, Chair. And I think he sits and smiles and salivates like a Cheshire cat at the, you know, the political sort of advantage he can gain from this, while, you know, some of us have to make these hard decisions. And again, not decisions we want to make, but ones we have to make. The world is changing, the economy is changing, and we have to adapt. It's very sad, Chair, that, you know, Councillor Shanker in particular just really wants to feather his own political nest rather than engage productively in this process. And on several occasions, Labour have failed to collaborate throughout our time in administration. It's sad that we have to deliver this type of news to our residents. I, for one, and I know all of the Cabinet, are not happy at delivering a full council tax precept to its maximum. However, they're the choices we've got. If there are other choices, please tell us, Councillor Shanker. But these are the choices we face. I think it would be incumbent on me that, you know, we should sit proud, actually, and particularly for my portfolio, on our record of regeneration in this city over our tenure. We have seen more cranes, more buildings, more jobs than I can ever remember, and we should be rightly proud of that. And the knock-on effect it has on the people of Derby, not just for the pride in our city, but for the jobs it creates, the enthusiasm, the investment, it goes on, and we should be rightly proud of that as a state. But none of us in this Cabinet take delight in delivering news of this nature, but we are doing what we have to do when we have to do it. I just hope that others would do the same in the same situation. Thank you, Chair.
Any other contributions, Cabinet, before we... Yes, Councillor. Roy.
Thank you, Chair. Adult social care has been in a difficult position for a number of years, and we've lobbied on many occasions about the cost of social care, and we're seeing that in this budget. But what we are trying to do is to work with our partners. We have a new integrated care system that's come into place early on this year, and we are working with partners in health to help alleviate some of the issues that we have. We have a better care fund that we are trying to maximise the amount of money that is paid in to the local authority, and health services are now beginning to realise that what we do as a local authority in keeping people in a warm and safe environment rather than a cold, unhealthy environment does not have the impact on health services that the latter would have done. So we are continuing to work on this budget. This will not be the final iteration, as you have said, but there is work going on at the back of even these proposals to reduce the impact. But what I would say is it would be nice if other councillors in the authority actually came and talked to us about some of these issues. We're always available. We will respond, as Councillor Shanker knows from me, and we will deliver a balanced budget at the February meeting. Whether that's accepted by all members of the council is yet to be seen, but whatever budget is accepted, it will be balanced and it will have to deliver on that balance for the people of the city.
Thank you. Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. A fair few bits have already been said, really. I mean, this is probably the most difficult budget this council has ever set, coming at the time of the perfect storm of war in Europe, global inflation, pay increases and a host of other items. But I just want to pick up on a few things from my portfolio, really. So the first one, given it's already been mentioned, is libraries. So under the proposals and the budget consultation, we'll be moving away from the DHA community libraries model, which has been in operation for a number of years, but which I think there's a general agreement that different models may work in other ways for us. So this change, of course, does not affect the statutory libraries, of which there are 5. So as such, with these proposals, we're looking at alternative models, alternative locations for the 10 CMLs, and we've retained a maintenance budget to look at these buildings or the rooms in which the libraries are located. This represents an opportunity for us, as it states in the proposals. It's community opportunities, locality working and asset efficiencies. So it represents opportunities for us, all of which are necessary, all of which are needed for the council. We do have CMLs that, from what we've seen, are located in the wrong places. We do have CMLs where attracting volunteers hasn't been the easiest, but we also have CMLs where there's already been interest and where potential futures are already being devolved for them. So to make a statement saying, right, that's it, libraries are all going to close, done and dusted, as Councillor Shanker and Councillor Skelton have just done, is wrong. We're doing all we can to secure sustainable and affordable futures.
Just for a correction there. I didn't actually say that. I made a comment on community libraries and I asked the leader to agree with
you
me.
didn't say they will close?
He did agree with me. I didn't. No, I didn't.
Okay. Okay. Well, to make any suggestion, Councillor Shanker, if that's better wording for you, to make any suggestion that, right, that's it, done and dusted, is wrong.
Whatever suggestion I made, Councillor Poulter, the leader of the council, agreed with me, and I gave you all an opportunity at the time to challenge it, and you didn't yourself either.
I wasn't speaking at the time, Councillor Shanker, but I am speaking now. So yeah, to make any statement like that, but to see them, Labour giving up on them in that way is a shame. But, I mean, we got pushback from the Labour Party when we approved funding to keep them open over the winter period as well. So, and in fact, Councillor Shanker, as far as I'm aware, that there are proposals afoot for the future of Sinfin Library that, as far as I'm aware, you've already been briefed on. If you haven't already had that briefing, I'm happy to make sure that happens. To my understanding, you already had. So I'm happy to chase that one up for you. Turning to one that hasn't been raised around Christmas, so the budget looks at what the future of the Christmas offer is going to be, what role various things will play in that. I think this year with the ice rink, it's been a brilliant Christmas offer from the ice rink and the tree and everything else. We know other cities are delivering fantastic offers in different ways with varying percentage contributions from local authorities. So we'll investigate and look at how we can do that, what we may do, and I've already had productive discussions with bids and internally with officers to look at how we can get that going from the new year. There was reference to localities as well, so our public protection officers, neighbourhood officers, local area coordinators and others, they do a fantastic job for us in the city week in and week out. We need to look at how we can deliver that service in a new way, prioritising ensuring that every councillor has the access to the same resources we currently have, and our plan is not to start stripping some wards of assets and, of our officers and not of others, as other political parties have done in the past. We continue to finalise what these will look like, but I've seen some brilliant suggestions of how we can do this so far. And to come back on the council tax point, again, it's been said, neither me nor any of my colleagues got involved in politics to raise council tax, but when we look at the Band D comparisons, we can see where we are. And of course, when we talk about 4.99%, and Councillor Shanker, if you want to suggest that that's not what you would have done, bring us the suggestions for what you would have done. And obviously, we see across the border in Nottingham that a 4.99% rise is proposed there as well. So that's what another neighbouring Labour council is doing. And Councillor Shanker, you mentioned as well any proposals that we considered but we didn't make. I'll give you one of them. We could have chosen to end neighbourhood funding, but we didn't. Our group increased it. We're proud to have increased it, and we're proud to be keeping that in the budget going forwards. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, an interesting point, bearing in mind historically, another group cut and stopped devolved funding in its entirety. So there you go. Good. Any other contributions? Why don't you sign off?
No, thanks, Chair. Obviously, we're going to get into extensive conversations moving forward around the budget proposals. Obviously, doors always remain open regarding to ideas. Obviously, encourage the public to engage as much as possible, but also to thank our officers across the whole cohort for the help and support to try and deliver this budget, because 6 weeks ago, when we was even, still filing through them all, this process always starts at the beginning of January and you build up to almost like an end of season finish. But the last 6 weeks in particular have been incredibly challenging, and I just want to thank everyone, all councillors and cabinet members for their contribution and support, because it hasn't been an easy time. Obviously looking forward to having those conversations and encourage everyone to take part in the consultation. So after that, Chair, I move to the recommendations, please.
Thank you, Councillor Smale. And those recommendations are 2.1 to 2.5, I believe. Can they be agreed? Thank you. That concludes the business of the Cabinet, other than to say, I hope you all and everybody has a great Christmas, holiday period, New Year, and we'll all come back refreshed in January to continue to resolve these type of issues. And if you need a bit of fresh air over Christmas, our city's parks are great to go out and have a walk in, and some of them are even being rewilded and have a different look to them, so you could always go and have a look around our parks. Have a great time. Thank you very much for your attendance.